In Santa Clara, the thing that stands out most around the draft isn't always the noise. Sometimes it's the kind of move that reveals priority, pressure, and a real contender mindset. And today, the signs are everywhere. Protection for Purdy, the secondary still under the microscope, a possible first-round surprise, and a player already on the roster getting pulled into trade talk before the board even opens up. So leave a like and stay with me, because this run of stories feels a whole lot more like major decisions than a normal pre-draft week. The first story goes straight to a point that, to me, can't be pushed off anymore. When the 49ers bring in Max Iheanachor for a pre-draft visit, that does not feel like some last-minute curiosity check. It feels like work being done around a real concern, and a very fair one. Because as dominant as Trent Williams still is, the clock doesn't slow down for anybody. He turns 38 in July. And serious franchises do not wait for urgency to start screaming before they prepare the next layer of protection. What makes this evaluation even more interesting is the player's path. Iheanachor did not come through that clean, polished, easy draft story route. He started at East Los Angeles College, transferred to Arizona State, stayed there for 3 seasons, and built real experience. That matters. Offensive line is one of those spots where maturity, snap volume, and game understanding matter a lot more than combine shine alone. And when you look at the 2025 production, the case gets even stronger. 12 starts, 484 pass blocking snaps, 0 sacks allowed, only 3 quarterback hits, and 14 total pressures. That is not a throwaway stat. That is serious consistency. Now add that to the rest of what the 49ers have been doing. They also brought in Caleb Lomu and Caden Proctor. So Santa Clara is not just casually glancing at this tackle class. They are digging. They are turning the spotlight toward the future of the edge of the offensive line. And I like that approach, because real contenders do not just move to survive the next Sunday. Real contenders build the bridge before the crossing becomes a problem. And there's a behind-the-scenes layer here that really stands out to me. Iheanachor is projected by a lot of people right in that late first-round range, exactly where the 49ers sit at 27. A visit like that, in that range, with this need hanging over the roster, does not feel random. It feels like an organization trying to figure out whether it can match future need with real-time board value. Because if you can land a tackle who already showed stability and pass protection and still has room to grow in your system, that is gold when Brock Purdy is your quarterback and your window is still open. To me, the signal here is clear. The 49ers are looking at the offensive line with real responsibility. And honestly, it's about time. The second story has a totally different temperature. This is not about development. It is not about inheritance. It is not about setting up the next phase. This is about market opportunity. And for a team with real ambition, that kind of opportunity should never be treated like background noise. Kenny Moore II entered trade conversations after reports said he and the Colts are on the same page about finding a new destination for 2026. The second that surfaced, his name started making sense for any competitive defense still taking a hard look at the middle of the secondary. That's where the 49ers come in. On paper, the corner room is not empty. Deommodore Lenoir is still an important piece. Renardo Green and Upton Stout are still there. The team also added Nate Hobbs and Jack Jones this offseason. So somebody could glance at it and say there's no reason to touch that group right now. But to me, that's a shallow read. Because having bodies is one thing. Having the exact mix of stability, short area route recognition, slot reaction, and veteran presence to deal with offenses that win on details is something else. And that's why Kenny Moore II stands out. He is not just another experienced corner trying to land somewhere new. He is a real nickel. A defender who's used to living inside, mirroring quick receivers, jumping short routes, and still showing up in run support. That kind of profile matters in January. It matters when an opposing offense keeps attacking short space over and over. It matters when a defense needs somebody who understands the chaos in the middle of the field before the ball is even snapped. And the production backs it up. 649 tackles, 21 interceptions, Pro Bowl recognition, and the feeling that he can still bring awareness and competitiveness at a high level. Of course, the money matters too, and that explains a lot about why Indianapolis would listen. With no guaranteed money left and a base salary in the $9.49 million to $10 million range in 2026, Moore becomes exactly the kind of player who sits at the intersection of football value and cap relief. That opens conversations. It does not decide anything by itself, but it opens conversations. To me, the central point is not treating corner like a desperate need. That's not it. The The point is understanding that a good secondary is not built on numbers alone. It is built on the right fit. And if the 49ers want to add more ready-made experience to that group without relying only on internal development from the younger guys, Kenny Moore II is exactly the kind of name that deserves to stay on the radar. If the cost drops, this story could get real in a hurry. The third story is one of those that splits the fan base the second the name hits the table. Because this debate is not about the biggest hole on the roster. It's about ceiling, board value, and the kind of courage a contender needs when the draft does not follow the comfortable script. The 49ers are sitting at pick 27 without that suffocating pressure to attack one single hole. That gives John Lynch freedom to work the way he likes best. Take the highest player on the board if the internal evaluation says the impact is worth it. And that is exactly where Colton Hood starts getting dangerous as a real possibility. A lot of people look at the secondary and think the team already did enough. Jack Jones is there. Nate Hobbs is there. Diamador Lenore is there. Renardo Green is there. Upton Stout is there. So why spend a first-round pick on a corner? I get the reaction. But the modern NFL punishes that kind of short-term thinking, especially in a division where you have to deal with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Marvin Harrison Jr. twice a year. You do not build a high-end defense by checking the minimum boxes. You build it by creating layers, answers, and elasticity. And Hood brings exactly that kind of temptation. He gained steam during the process, showed well at the Senior Bowl, tested well at the Combine, and stopped looking like one of those fringe first-round names people could casually dismiss. The stylistic fit matters too. As a physical press-man corner, he feels like a really interesting piece for a system that could lean into that aggressiveness with Raheem Morris running the defense. It's not hard to see why some evaluators started viewing him as a player rising at the right time. What makes this even more serious is when sharper mock drafts start pushing the name into the back end of round one. Peter Schrager had Hood going 29th to Kansas City. And when that kind of projection shows up, the discussion stops feeling like random internet theory and starts feeling like something that could actually happen in a draft room. If there's a run on tackles and wide receivers before 27, the 49ers could end up staring at the board and finding a corner who was not the loudest need, but maybe the best value left. And I'll be very direct. As a surprise first-round pick, this interests me way more than it might at first glance. Because it would not be luxury. It would be protection against the schedule, against injuries, and against the reality of a conference that demands high-level coverage all year long. The fourth story changes the type of tension completely, because this is not about legacy, and it is not about nostalgia. This is about a player who is still part of the plan and still got pulled into trade talk as the market started heating up near the draft. Renardo Green got dragged into that noise because of the context, because of the sideline moment during the playoff game against Seattle, and because people love jumping to conclusions when they see Kyle Shanahan light into a player on the sideline. But to me, this story gets a whole lot more interesting once you hear what came after. Nick Wagner said on April 15 that Green really was connected to the market by people on the outside, but that both Shanahan and John Lynch shut that down and still believe in his future in San Francisco. And that matters. It matters because it shows that inside the building, the team is not reading Renardo like a disposable piece or like an asset to flip right now just because the draft is close. They are reading him as a player who can still answer, still grow, and still justify the investment they made when he came out of college. And honestly, that makes sense. This does not look like a talent problem. It looks like high expectations being placed on a player who is entering a pivotal point in his career. Renardo is heading into year 3 with real pressure, because that is exactly when a franchise starts projecting whether there is a path to an extension down the line. And that leads right to the biggest part of this story. He is going to need a cleaner year, fewer mental mistakes, and more consistency if he wants to turn internal belief into a long-term commitment. That's real NFL life. Having tools is not enough. You have to stabilize. That is why I really liked what Shanahan said on March 30th. He basically framed that public sideline moment as a challenge, not a condemnation. He said if he ever stops pushing a player, that is when there is a real problem. He also said he believes a lot in Renardo, in his talent, in the kind of player he is, and that the reaction came because he expects more. That changes the entire light around the story. It pulls that moment out of the breakup theory and puts it right back into the hard reality of a contender that needs more precision from the players on the field. So to me, the read is simple. Renardo Green's name may float around outside the building, but inside the building, the plan still looks like development, not departure. And if he answers the right way in 2026, this conversation will fade fast. If I close this out with my most honest read, it's simple. The 49ers are thinking like real contenders. I like that. I like seeing this team treat the offensive line seriously, keep monitoring the secondary, and stay unafraid to consider talent over the most obvious need. To me, the biggest mistake right now would be getting comfortable. Santa Clara is not in a phase where it can experiment without pressure. It is in a phase where it has to nail decisions that support a real run at the top of the NFC. And that is exactly how this roster needs to be handled.